Good morning, folks. I hope you've all had a very good week, and thank you for tuning into the news at Bend. Now, today I wanted to talk really just about one subject, and it's an example of a theme that I've talked about many times before. It's a theme that manifests itself in many malign ways in our society, and it's only getting worse. And the example I wanted to use to exemplify this theme was the arrest of a man in Manchester earlier this week when he burnt the Quran. And the example is not the burning of the Quran, it's his arrest. And the theme is this: what we've done in this country over the last 25 years is taken a vast number of different cultures at a rate that's unprecedented in the history of any country, obviously, therefore, in the history of our country. And we can't cope in this country with a number of different cultures that have come in to the country. Moreover, we've made, and this is really the point, we've made a framework, a regulatory and legal framework, which sets out to put a protective blanket around all these cultures that have come to this country. And instead of making any effort to integrate those cultures into our great culture, the culture which propelled us to being what we are today and one of the greatest nations, frankly, in history, instead of bringing those cultures into our culture, what we've done is said to those cultures that you are free to come to our country, free to practice your cultural habits, your norms, and to have the religious beliefs that you have. Moreover, we won't try to integrate you. In fact, we will put a protective blanket around you, and we will make sure that you are given favoured status in our institutions, in our criminal justice system, by the authorities in general, when you go to get a job, and so on and so forth. And you would have heard me give lots of examples of how this works. But you couldn't have a more starker example than a man being arrested because he burned a Quran. And the offence on which he was arrested was that it was a racially aggravated public order offence. Now, how can burning a Quran, which was transmitted, he transmitted that through social media, how can that be racially aggravated? With a massive leap of the imagination, you might be able to argue that Islamophobia could on occasion be used to target a particular ethnic group from North Africa, Pakistan, whatever. I don't buy that argument, by the way, but you might be able to make it if there was some interaction by the individual who's mounting the attack and the naming of the grouping that he was attacking. But this was the burning of a book on social media without any particular targeting of anyone. So it can't be racial. And this is where our system has got so confused. In the pursuit of affording ethnic minorities in this country, in this case Muslim ethnic minorities, a protected status, what we are doing is shutting down freedom of speech, in this man's case freedom of expression, and which are the same thing basically. And what we're therefore doing is shutting down democracy, because when you shut down freedom of expression and democracy, you make it impossible to have a debate. If you can't have a debate, you can't determine what is the right way forward for the majority of the people in the country. And if you can't determine what is in the best interest of the majority, you by definition don't have a democracy. There can be no democracy without free speech, and we are radically moving away from our democracy. It is an anathema to me that anyone in this country could be arrested for burning a book. Now, just before anyone thinks, oh, well, Ben, you're Islamophobic, you wouldn't make this argument if it wasn't the Quran. Well, let me tell you this. When I heard about this chap being arrested, I did consider momentarily taking a Bible and burning it on the street to see whether I'd be arrested for burning a Bible. But the notion of burning a Bible filled me with dread, repugnancy. And I find the burning of any book, the Quran, the Bible, fictional text, whatever, repugnant. And I find it repugnant because for me, books encapsulate knowledge. They're a mechanism by which people can communicate with each other, whether or not we like what is being communicated. They're therefore part of the fabric of free speech. But no one should be prohibited from expressing their own disagreement with what's in a book or their disagreement with a particular ideology by burning it. That's just another way of having the debate. And if we're to go on being the free culture that we've been, a culture with diversity of thought rather than forced diversity of ethnicities and cultures, if we're to be a culture of diversity of thought, one that actually through debate is capable of determining what's in the best interest of the majority and therefore democratically advancing our interests, we can't be a culture that arrests people for the burning of a book, however repugnant we might think that is. There's a flip side to this as well, of course. Often this two-tier society that I've just described, the protected blanket given to minorities in this country through diversity, equity and inclusion, often that is exemplified by the kind of examples I've just given where the minorities are protected. But the flip side of the same coin is where the system is used against the majority. And there are umpteen examples of that as well. Perhaps the clearest one is what happened after the Southport killings when 70 people who protested, and I'm not right, had protested, said stuff on social media, went out physically on protest, said nasty things to the police, put words on placards, had the criminal justice system directed at them by the Prime Minister, who had already found them guilty in his own mind and in the words that he used, by categorising them all as far-right extremists and saying that the book of the law would be thrown against them. Their right of protest was removed. And just for utter clarity, I'm not endorsing the riots, but the people who were peacefully protesting, the people who raised their concerns on social media, their right to raise all of that was shut down. And 70-odd people were arrested, one of whom hanged himself in jail, a chap called Peter Lynch. We have a system in this country now where a particular minority is protected, and if you challenge the ideology and culture of that minority, you are arrested and incarcerated. And if you're part of that minority, frankly, you can get away, I would say, with murder. That's an expression, an English expression, an old English expression that some people might find offensive nowadays, but I'm going to say it. You could get away with blue murder. And this has to stop. We've got to ditch DEI. And one of the best things that President Trump's done is come out with a blanket removal of that dangerous regulatory framework that is DEI. DEI is going to be the end of the United Kingdom unless we get rid of it. Every single leader of every single political party, every single parliamentarian should be calling for the end of DEI. I've been calling it for a long time, and I hope everyone who has watched this little broadcast will continue to call for its end. Thank you.